party time, and it's coming. It's called Hawksfest. Hawksfest 2015. Actually, that was not my choice, but everybody ruled me. I wanted to call it Freedom Fest or something, but yeah, they just said, let's just call it Hawksfest. But, it is what it is. See what I'm saying? Anyway, but be here the first weekend of September at my farm. There's going to be fun. There's going to be food. There's going to be a live concert, including a 20-year reunion of my Black Sabbath tribute. And you can watch this old rocker try to look cool again. Not. But let's do it anyway. Lots of space for camping, and if you don't want to camp, we have a nice motel in town called the Hampton Inn. Make reservations now. Lebanon, Kentucky, Hampton Inn. Go look it up, find it. I have some non-electric space for RVs, to pull your RVs if you want to bring RVs in. That's fine. We have the space for that. But listen, I really hope you come, as it's the station's celebration for the station's family, which is everyone in the sound of my voice. And we want to try to do this every year. Destination Human and myself and several others have spent months preparing the farm to make this a pleasant, informative, fun, and humans just sharing humans, experiencing humans event. Trying to make this the best event possible. And we have nothing to sell, no agendas, just people converging with other people and having a lot of fun. So I hope to see you there. Go to the homepage, www.freedomslips.com, scroll down to the middle, and you will see a very simple link that says Hawksfest 2015. Thank you. I hope to see you there.
Did you ever feel that things were not quite right? That everything was just ever so slightly askew?
Do you have, to paraphrase Morpheus, a splinter in your mind?
If you're interested in hearing the latest information about UFOs, the paranormal,
ancient cultures and structures,
monatomic elements,
longevity,
fantastic discoveries in science,
downloaded to your brain,
then tune into us. Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Mackie.
And we are Shiny Side Out, Sundays 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern. See you then.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome, one and all, to I'm Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter, broadcasting live from Sandbanks Provincial Park in beautiful Ontario, right on Lake Ontario. Just an awesome place to camp. I'm out here with the family this week, and I still got a great show for you guys. James McCanney is here. James, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me? How's the sound?
Oh, it's perfect. And Angela, are you with us?
I am. I'm here. Hello.
Okay, great. Hey, I was just, I don't know if you saw my little message in the chat box, but Alberto Ruz is going to join us. If you just got to bring him into the call if you can. He just sent me a personal connection. I just told him to hang up and you call him back.
Okay.
All right?
Sounds good. I'll bring him in now.
So
I'll try to. Yeah, here he is. I'll bring him in.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So we'll just wait for Alberto to join us. Alberto Ruz is down in Mexico. James is in, you in South America right now?
Well,
James?
We don't say, but I'm comfortable. Let's put it down.
He's he's comfortable. He's incognito.
I'm in a different part of the planet, and far side of the world. Let's put it down.
It looks like Alberto's with us. Alberto.
I'm here.
You're here. Okay. Awesome. Great to see you're with us. Are you at Huehuecoyo right now?
Listen, what?
Are you down at your eco village, Huehuecoyo?
Yeah, I am in the village, right? Is Angela with us now?
I am.
I think so.
Hi, Alberto.
And James is also there. Good day.
Alberto,
Hi, James.
hi.
Yes.
¿Cómo estamos, Alberto? ¿Cómo va?
Bien, ¿y tú?
Excelente.
Qué bueno.
Mejor que nunca.
Qué bueno. Mejor que ayer y no tan bien como mañana.
Sí, exacto.
Better than yesterday, but not as well as tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful, guys. Beautiful. I love your Spanish. I wish I could speak it or even understand it. But hey, this is basically a continuation of an interview we had a month ago. We talked a lot about ancient archaeology in Mayan culture, astroarchaeology, I think they call it. It's a new field that I didn't even know existed. And it was really an amazing show. Yeah, beautiful stuff. But I should check in with you guys just to see how you're doing. Alberto, how's it going down there in Mexico?
Well, it's been raining in the last few days. We had yesterday the president made his informe in yearly speech about how great things are going. It's very safe.
I lost you a bit there, bud.
I mean, we have a spaceship now crossing our communication because I can hear the airplanes going on and down. But anyway, I was just saying that the president yesterday made a speech to the nation saying how safe and how harmonious and how peaceful is our country. So we all feel very good that the president finally said that everything is okay.
Not too honest though, eh?
Hello?
Yeah.
No.
Is that that sounds like by edict, by pronouncement.
So, how are you doing, James?
Very good. Very good. Very, very busy. Oh my goodness. I got to take a day off or something. But
are you still in
I'm
the
working.
South? Are you
I'm
still
sorry,
in the
what?
South? Are you still in the South?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't know if I'm going to go someplace at some point. Probably pretty soon. I'll just. But what I've been doing is working and getting a bunch of things done. And today I made a major accomplishment. I got some things actually packaged and out. So that's getting very close to the point where I can kind of free up for a while.
Great.
So I'm at
a park right now camping with my kids. It's a little noisy here, guys, but I'll try to mute when I'm not talking.
Yeah, it is very noisy. I don't know which one of the lines is noisy, but there is a lot of noise. The sound is not great now.
Yeah, that's Brian. Brian is, if a big truck goes by, go out and chase the tires and make them go away.
Well, I'm muting in between. I'm trying to remember to mute when I'm not saying something, guys. That'll help.
That's kind of like the old walkie-talkie. You have to mute when after you get done talking, so the noise level goes down, so you can hear.
Exactly.
We'll speak slower then. We'll let you, Brian, talk with your walkie-talkie, and so we can all understand each other.
Sounds good. So, Angela, and how's Angela doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you very much. Feeling better. I'm just feeling like myself again, which is kind of interesting. I've been contemplating the meaning of life for about the past month, and I wasn't coming up with much. And then I finally snapped out of it a few days ago. So I think I'm doing well now. I think I'm all right. I was wondering if my job in life was to watch my husband lose things and then watch him find them. I was wondering if that was my purpose in life, was to watch my husband lose items and then find them. So that was my week.
Okay. Okay, welcome
Wow.
back, Angela.
Thanks. Nice to see you there, Alberto, and also you, James, and of course Brian. My internet was down the last time that you were on, Alberto, so I was not
Yeah.
able to. I think both
Yeah.
of you. So it's good to hear your voice. And our birthday is coming up.
Yeah, we're gonna have a big party.
There you go.
We're organizing a very big festival because it's my 70th and
Wow.
it's the 80th anniversary of one of my best friends, and so we're gonna celebrate 100 years, 150 years anniversary.
Wow, that is impressive.
And I'm inviting here to our eco-village poets, musicians, and dancers, and circus people, and so we're gonna have a festival. It's not gonna be my birthday party but we're gonna make a festival.
Wow, that sounds like so much fun.
If you have one of those, if you, James, have one of those flying machines where you can all come without paying gasoline or any biocombustible, you can come up. Wait,
Sounds like a perfect plan.
I'm working on such a device.
I know. That's why.
you-
I know.
If you see somebody flying in, silently, you'll know it's me.
Okay. Right now, when I want to see you, I only see 3 penguins. So that's what I thought you were in the polar and the polar Arctic.
Yeah. That's what Skype gives you if you don't put in your own picture. I figured
Okay.
the world is better off not seeing my picture. So
Good. So, Brian, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, I think we're gonna pick up where we left off in the last interview, and you asked James about his view of the consciousness of the planet, whether he thought it was a living being, and matters of that sort. So I thought we'd pick it up from there. I thought that was a great question, and unfortunately, you didn't get to answer it until the very end of the interview.
right.
Yeah.
So, James, what do you say to that question?
James was starting to talk about that, and I was very pleased to read what he wrote me a few days afterward. So you can pick up from there, James. It's interesting to hear a scientist talking about the Earth as a living being, and I think that is a very important message that we can convey. You can convey as a scientist, because usually scientists are the last to understand or to reflect what is out there in nature.
Right.
There's-
Yeah.
there's so much Go ahead.
If they cannot put a voltmeter on it, then it doesn't exist. And typical of science. But a long time ago, and when I was growing up, let me start here. I spent a lot of time in the wilderness. And I happened to grow up in Minnesota, so I grew up on the Canadian border in the what's known as the Boundary Water Canoe area now. At the time, it was just the Boundary Waters. Now it's basically a national park reserve area, and it frontiers with Quetico, which is the Canadian side, which is about 3 times bigger. But it's all lakes, and so you go by canoe, and you carry your canoe across the portage, and then you go to the next lake, and you continue going. And I'd spend the whole summer up there, watching the animals and just contemplating life. But it also gave me a connection with the universe, literally. And so I'd always been very serious about mathematics and my physics study, etc. But I also realized that the secrets of the universe were very simple, but very subtle. And that's why a lot of scientists muddle around, and a lot of times they get off into never, mathematics or physics or astronomy land, and they never come back. They're just, they're kind of lost on these paths. Many times that don't lead any place, and they've lost their way home, so to speak. And so anyway, what I've always tried to do is keep very much grounded to understand the workings of the cosmos and the physical being and the human being. And literally, we are an antenna. We are a physical antenna. About, maybe a half a year ago, I did a show on grounding, one of my own radio shows, at the request of some listeners. And so I talked about grounding and what it does, how it physically, electrically connects you with the earth. And you do this, one of the techniques is to just walk in the dew in the morning. So your feet are electrically connected to the earth, and then the resonance frequencies, etc., of which we are part of, it helps to heal the body. So oddly enough, in the last week, I had a number of people call in and say that they've been doing this for some time, and that the one guy was gaining health, he was getting a lot more healthy, and one woman was doing her yoga in the morning dew, etc. So anyway, I thought that was interesting that as people actually changed their lives, they started doing this. But another, I think I was mentioning this at the end of last show, where we, Alberto and I were on an interview, that in the mid-1990s, I was working with a group of atmospheric scientists in Russia, in the central Russia, in the University of Novosibirsk, which is a big, major university for science. Well, the scientists there were measuring atmospheric phenomena, and they just didn't know where this energy was coming from. So they got my work, they started to translate it, and so there was daily meetings going on and communication back and forth. Lo and behold, the psychology professors at the university got wind of this and started sitting in. And so what they were doing at the time is they were measuring the response of people towards the position of the planets and other, basically trying to put some kind of a measurement, or trying to establish a scientific basis for astrology, why the planets affect us and different positions, and Mercury retrograde, whatever. And so they started listening in on these physics lectures to deal with my electric nature of the solar system and universe. And they realized that this is what was causing the reaction in humans. And so they also realized that when the babies were born, they were studying unborn fetuses, and they were actually measuring the mothers and the reaction of fetus to various planetary alignments, etc., or lunar conditions. And what they realized is when the baby was born, that changed everything, because all of a sudden all the senses kicked in and started to override these other connections, because in the fetus state, the baby was encapsulated and really didn't have all of these senses constantly bombarding them with signals. So the end result is that as people grow up, some people lose that connection or forget about it, or just lose consciousness of their connection to the universe, while other people don't. And so that's what I think we live in, a confusing society, is because people are simply not connected, or they've forgotten, or they're not taught how to recognize their feelings. And let me just give an example. When you can be communicating with all the people around you, and all of a sudden everybody's kind of at verbal war with each other. Nothing's going right. Nobody's, it's everything is confused. You say something to somebody and it's all taken completely incorrectly. And then I'd call up this friend of mine, and he had an astrologer friend, and she'd say, "Oh, Mercury's in retrograde on the 9th or some date. Everything will be better." And so I'd go, "Okay." And on the 9th, you'd come into the same room, the same people, and everybody's, "Oh, hi, how's it going? Oh, yeah, that's great. Sure, anytime." And I'm like, whoa. There's really something to all of this. And so we are basically a big antenna. We are a spiritual being that's living in a physical body, and it's all connected. So, part of I'm probably not as tuned as many people who have spent a lot more time in their spiritual being and concentrating on that. But I hopefully have, as a scientist, a very good balance between the two. So
Yeah.
that's the short version.
Yeah. I would like to know, regarding to the same topic, the same subject. We usually speak about the Earth as a Mother Nature, Mother Earth, Pachamama, Tonantzin, Gaia. Most of the significance of different interpretations of the Earth, they have to do with with Mother, with the living feminine essence or body or organism, and that's why mostly when we feel we have on ground, we're not grounded, is basically we have lost that connection with this, not only with the aspect of the electrical aspect of the earth, but also with the nurturing, with the yes, with the living, the possibility of create life. You know, I mean, life is a living being who is able to create other living beings, and it's only not only us humans, but all the rest of beings or living beings, and this we share this same common mother. You know, how I mean, and that's many times the symbols is precisely a woman, you know, a feminine entity. But I would like to know, I mean, like you say, we are electrically connected to the cosmos, and that would be maybe positive and electricity, and then the earth should be a negative in the sense of electrical energy. So what is it that makes Mother Earth to be the pole that grounds and not the pole that that connects us to the universe? I mean, I would like to understand from your point of view, how do you explain, understand, and how science speaks about that?
Well, let's talk, for example, about health, just the health of your body. I took some health courses at one point, and we did this as a little experiment. You rub garlic, I forget if it's on, I think it's on the top of your head or it's on the bottom of your feet. You just rub it. And like within less than a half of a minute, you can smell it. You rub it on the bottom of your feet, you can smell it at the top of your head. Mm-hmm. And it literally travels through your skin, through your system, and that fast out your skin on the top of your head. Mm-hmm. And so the skin is the biggest organ in the body, literally, mm-hmm. but it's also a giant antenna. And that's a lot of times when we feel itchy or kind of like, just kind of like your skin, there's an expression, your skin is crawling on you. You know, mm-hmm. it just, but then also like the whole concept of acupuncture where you, or the other types of natural healing where you affect a certain point on the body and it, can affect an internal organ or something. Mm-hmm. Or like massage the feet in certain areas, and it'll help an internal organ where you really can't get to touch it. Mm-hmm. But all of this comes back to the fact that we're just really connected. Sometimes people will have a sore back, but it's not their back; it's their stomach muscles that are out of kilter, mm-hmm. and we're all connected. But also in terms of healing, there's a number of new techniques for cancer treatment that are coming in. One of them is the use of hemp or marijuana. But mm-hmm. what it does, it's well known now, it's in this is medical research, is that it starts the cells to communicate. And so when people say they get high, what's really happening is all of their cells are firing, so to speak, and communicating. And so what cancer is, when I was getting my master's degree in physics at Tulane University, one of my courses was biophysics at the Tulane Medical School. And the professor said, we know what cancer is. It's the fact that cells cannot see the adjacent cells, so they start growing and growing. It's like if you cut your finger, the cells start to grow and bridge the gap because they don't see that cell next to them. And when they finally meet a cell, they start to build up these strong cells. But when they finally meet a cell, they stop growing, and that's what we call scar tissue. And if you take vitamin E, you can kind of do away with the scar tissue. But basically, cancer is kind of the same thing. When our body stops communicating, and this could happen because we're exposed to chemicals, because you're upset, because your environment is bad, because you're immersed in microwave radiation. Who knows what affects people? But your cells cannot see each other. So literally, if you can get the body to start communicating again, it has the ability to heal itself. And also to live for a very long time. It turns out that the human body evolved in a atmosphere and conditions that were very different from today. There was a lot more humidity. The temperature was higher, probably in the 80s. And people's skin, like people are putting lotion on their skin all the time today to make up for the moisture loss, because our bodies did not evolve in this environment. And then they live in a house that's heated or with air conditioning, and it dries them out completely to the bone. And and then you add in GMO foods and chemicals, and the whole spectrum of chemicals we live with today, and that's why people are so unhealthy.
Yeah.
And so to get back to health, you have to get out of that environment and doing exactly what you're doing, Alberto.
Yeah.
You're raising your food, eating it fresh, drinking water that has minerals in it that come from the rivers or the streams.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we're very connected electrically.
Yeah. I was thinking connection between that and the whole purpose of how you call it, doing pilgrimages and walking through sacred roads to sacred places. This whole idea of doing acupuncture on the surface of the Mother Earth to all the different energetic centers of the earth, which are the sacred centers, and to do it through certain roads like the acupuncture and with all the different healing that has to do with touching. When you touch, precisely you were saying, when you touch a part of your body, you touch the organ that is underneath. And then this whole idea of walking in silence and in consciousness through different roads or paths that have been known for centuries or for millennia, I'm just thinking about the Camino de Santiago, in Spain, but we have them in Mexico, the Camino a Chalma, and mostly every country, every culture has its sacred centers, and it's got these sacred roads or paths, Do you see that, the connection between what you were saying before and this exercise of recovering the sacred centers, the sacred magic centers, and also to recover the walking in silence and in consciousness to heal there?
Yeah, absolutely. There's an interesting experiment that you can do, and here's somewhat how it goes. You take a flat sheet of thin metal, and you put 2 electrode leads on the side that would normally go to a speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And you put salt, just plain table salt, onto the metal sheet. And so this is a metal sheet, maybe, half a meter by half a meter with 2 electrodes. It sounds like we're heading into a break.
Yeah, we're heading into a break right now. We'll be right back, everyone.
That's great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're back soon with I'm Nature, folks.
And feel free to hit mute.
Welcome back to I Am Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter. This week we have 2 amazing guests, Alberto and James McCanney. And they're talking about, just before we went on the break, the connection between, my interpretation is anyways, that electrical energy and spiritual energy on the planet. And I'll let James keep going on that point, because it was really getting into some interesting territory. Pick her up, James.
Okay, yeah, what I was talking about, just to summarize, is that this experiment you can do, take a thin metal sheet, put 2 electrodes that would normally go to a speaker, like a music speaker, on the piece of metal. The metal is horizontal, and you sprinkle a bunch of salt on there. And now you get a frequency generator, an electrical frequency generator, and you start up from 0 hertz, 0 cycles per second, and you come up, and the very first vibrational mode is very simple. It'll be like a circle, and the salt vibrates, and what happens is the plate vibrates at a certain a resonance frequency, but where it vibrates the most shakes the salt off into the areas where it's not vibrating at all. And so what you see is the vibrational pattern, the resonance pattern that's set up in the middle. And now this happens with a drum head on a drum or anything else. But okay, now start turning up the frequency and the pattern becomes more complex. But when you hit a resonance frequency, the pattern stays there. Okay, now turn up the frequency again, and the pattern gets more complex. And what you're doing is you're identifying at certain set frequencies the resonance frequency of this piece of metal. The Earth has the same thing, and it's both physical resonance with sound, it's electrical resonance with electricity and magnetism. And so the Earth is a big cavity, so to speak, electrical cavity. I'm not saying it's hollow, but it's a electrical, a cavity is a physics term, and has all of these resonance frequencies. People have identified these empirically simply by being in places and they are attached electrically to this system, and they're at the vibration points. The other thing that happens is in the atmosphere, this is part of my work identifying this, is that there's what we call the vertical electric field. It's about probably, let's say it's about 300 volts per meter. That means for 1 meter off the ground, there's a 300 volt potential. If you go up 2 meters, that's 600 volts. And so that's a tremendous electrical potential, but we don't notice it because the atmosphere of Earth is a dielectric. And a dielectric is a very good, let's say, absorber of this electric field. So we only have electrical conditions when we have lightning or other electrical discharges in the atmosphere. But this electric field goes all the way up to the ionosphere. The ionosphere is like a cavity, an electrical cavity, and it's constantly interacting with the external electric fields and magnetic fields that are in outer space around us. We are connected to all of this. So, we are very much electrically connected. And also with physical resonance frequencies that are really like vibrational sound frequencies. And what people do who become enlightened is they spend a lot of time allowing their body to communicate with their surroundings. And that's what, now getting back to Alberto's comment about the walks in the places and the locations. And for example, say on a pyramid, so you go up to the top of the pyramid at Chichen Itza or Palenque, whatever. What you're doing is you're ascending, you're getting way up higher than you normally would be in the electric field. And so the electrical currents passing up there are much higher. And so anyway, it's just different ways of connecting into this environment.
Yeah. When you mentioned a few seconds ago the word ionosphere, how you say ionosphere? The ions.
The ionosphere. The
ionosphere, right. It came to my mind that the work that Jose Argüelles was doing at the end of his life was precisely, he was talking a lot about noosphere. I don't know, noosphere, N-O-O sphere, noosphere, which is like this dimension which is beyond biosphere, and which I don't know. I imagine that several of the scientists have also talked about this space in the universe that around the Earth, that is like the conscious, like the collective conscious of the Earth and all the living beings on the Earth. All that is some way what would be the our head and our bodies, and what will be our mind in our bodies, what would be our, I don't know exactly, our spirit in our bodies and our human bodies would be like the noosphere. Can you talk us a little about the noosphere?
There's two comments I have. One is that if there is a thought or a concept that develops, it's like it does permeate the human psyche. And maybe we've all had ESP experiences where you haven't talked to somebody for a long time, and all of a sudden you pick up the phone to call them as they're picking up the phone to call you, or something like that. It's one of those, and we just kind of laugh and say ESP, but extrasensory perception. But there's a tremendous amount of scientific data to suggest that those things really happen. And the other part of this, which is very interesting, if we look at the world leadership, and I like to point at these, for example, the European banking community, which literally runs the financial empire of the world, and through it manipulates and controls entire countries and populations, and the third world keeps them in the dirt or whatever, all of these extended effects. But one thing they're very worried about, they don't want people in small groups even to get together, because they know the power of communal association.
Yeah.
They are very afraid of small groups that get together. So at any rate, those are my two comments.
It's funny because, at a certain moment when I was working with Jose Argüelles, we held 2 times in Brazil 2 international planetary gatherings, which were planetary gatherings for the biospheric rights. I mean, we're talking now the Earth Mother or Mother Nature rights, but I mean, Argüelles 15, 20 years ago was already talking about biospheric rights. And just last year of his life, he was living in Australia, and he was preparing and organizing and starting to call some 40 people from around the world to get together in New Zealand for the first noospheric encounter for the rights of the noosphere, And so that's one time when I was talking with Brian, I mentioned that the point of view for Jose Argüelles was the one of an astronaut, He looked up upon the Earth and about the history, about what was going on this planet, on this plan, on this dimension, from a perspective that I could never see, Like I've been now very much involved into the movement of the rights of nature, of the rights of Mother Earth. And 15, 20 years, he was already talking about biospheric rights. And he died just before we could get all together in New Zealand to start talking together and joining our minds, talking about groups, a group of very selected people from all over the planet, to talk about noospheric rights, What does that ring, and what does this story rings into your mind, into your being, James?
I know that, like I say, they're very afraid of people getting together.
Yeah.
And in fact, just a little side note, that's why many churches today, especially the ones that are 501c3 in the United States, they have certain things that they do, and I call them the happy churches, where they go and everybody sings and you leave. They don't really do anything spiritual there.
Yeah.
And there's no communication. I had an experience, it was a long time ago, probably back in the 90s, but Art Bell was a talk show host who had a show back in the 1990s. I was a guest on his show quite a few times on a regular basis, but one night he had planned, and he kind of got his audience prepped, and he said on a given night they were going to have a worldwide mental communication session, and I can't remember what they were going to concentrate about, but they got part of the way into it, and I don't know why, but he said, this is getting too powerful, and they stopped it. And I just remember that, and it was like something got out of control, and he didn't feel easy with it. but it was a collective consciousness experiment with, because of the radio show being all over the world and people listening. Right. But now I have a question for you, Alberto. When you said you were going to meet in Brazil and then New Zealand, was there a reason for the locations that you picked for the meetings?
Well, I know he was living the last years of his life. He was living in Australia because he had a lot of problems to go back to the States. In Mexico, he had already problems for talking about certain things he shouldn't be talking. And he felt safer over there. And the fact that they chose he was choosing New Zealand is because at a certain moment he denied to have citizenship. You know, he adopted, like many of us who would like to do or we do, planetary citizenship. But at a certain moment, the people from New Zealand, the Maoris, agreed to give him a Maori citizenship. You know, so he was very well connected to some of the spiritual leaders or political leaders from the Maori, and that's why I think it was one of the first reasons why he chose to do it in New Zealand. I don't know more about that. I really never even thought about why. You know?
Yeah, yeah, but it just his own. Now, when you say him, you're talking about Jose?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, but when it's kind of like opening up a can of gasoline and throwing a match in it just to see what happens.
Yeah.
It's something we've lost connection to, and I think this is one of the things we actually talked a bit about this on the previous show, is the psychology of, for example, the Mayans.
Yeah.
When they were doing their ceremonies and other things like that, we kind of have a feeling, and when we have ceremonies, we typically do there's a lot of physical things, or like on the 4th of July, we shoot off fireworks, which are representative of something.
Mhm.
But we don't have ceremonies typically in our modern culture which concentrate on certain things. The closest we get to it is something like most of the holidays are commemorating wars.
Yeah.
We rarely have holidays that commemorate positive things,
Yeah.
or collective consciousness, or anything above the, base, rudimentary, down on the ground plane.
Yeah.
So it's like we don't know what's going to happen. We don't have any experience with this, with what's going to happen. I can tell you, though, that the people who operate the planet have these kind of meetings. They get together. They have collective conscious meetings. And they're not just getting together to talk business or how the fluctuation of the dollar is going to be next month.
Yeah.
They have other kinds of meetings, and from what I understand, some of them aren't not so. Well, let's put it. Say they're not the kind of meeting that you and I would go to.
No,
But
I don't think they will invite us anyway, so don't worry.
No, I'm not worried about it. I have not gotten my invitation either.
Yeah.
But they do have collective consciousness
I know.
activities.
For sure. And I don't know why, but we're returning back again to talk. I am returning back to talk about Jose Argüelles, because he was part of the group of people that back in the 1970s started with Earth Day, and that idea of starting with Earth Day in the University of Davis. At that time, he was teaching there with a group of people. The purpose was basically to make a connection, a world connection, a planetary connection, about the fact that it was not a day dedicated to independence, wars, or saints, but it was dedicated to the Earth. And in 1987, he was the originator of the planetary harmonic convergence, which was the first, I think, time in history that I remember where thousands or hundreds of thousands of people met on the 16th and 17th August 1987, precisely according to the Mayan calendars and the Aztec calendars, interpretation of the calendars, because those 2 days were dedicated to an end of a larger cycle of time and a beginning of a cycle of time. And what he basically asks those hundreds or thousands of people in the world, or millions of people in the world, is just concentrate your intention on doing something good, for arts, for ecology, for spirituality. And it happened, basically that event I started here in Mexico, and other people picked it up the same wavelength, and we began doing that. Suddenly there were hundreds and hundreds of groups doing the same thing on the same days, And I guess that, that's some of the things that are balancing, a little of the effects of the other groups of people doing the same thing.
Exactly. This is very interesting. As a scientist, I, am more interested in the effects, and and when we do things like this, like I say, we don't have any experience with this, with actually getting people, or even 15 people in a room, and sitting around a campfire or a teepee, whatever. And I've lived in a teepee part of my life. I've lived summers and actually through winters in a teepee. And the Native Americans said that the reason the white man, the Europeans, have such conflict in their life is because they live in square houses. That square is not a natural shape. And so that round and curved rooms, etc., where you live, are conducive to more spirituality and a feeling of with your environment.
Yeah. Well, one day you have to come up to visit us here in Huehuecoyos, because the architecture of our house is pretty interesting, because precisely, we understood that from the beginning. And even if not all the houses, but some of the houses, or most of the houses in our community and our villages have these forms, different forms that were not square buildings, square rooms or square houses, Anyway.
Right. Now, is it? Well, let's talk about that offline, because I think we'll make that happen.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I'd love to comply with your request there.
Okay.
Well, one of the reasons I want to get you guys together, because I think you have a lot to share, and I think you both have tremendous strengths, and I think that you could both complement each other's strengths. Alberto is an incredible, probably one of the top. I think you're one of the top activists in the world, Alberto. I mean, you can bring people together like no one I've ever met. And James is one of the top scientists, and he rejected the dominant ideology of the Western science community. He refused to let his ideas be used as much as he could for the military or complex applications and whatnot. And I think there's a lot of synergies there, because to me, James, you kind of represent, and people like Alberto and me, we're more on the side of the mother, but you kind of bring in the father, the more powerful forces of the universe. You understand those much better than most people.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I guess we do have this image of the creator as a father, and the earth as the mother. Is that, Alberto? Would you agree with that? As the
Well, yeah, it is the image. It's usually, even for us, when we do ceremony, we always look up at the sky, and we look up at the sun as the father. Maybe not. We don't talk about God, but we, at least in our ceremonies, but we talk about God Father, I mean the sun as the father, and but Pachamama, Mother Earth, like a feminine principle. Yeah, it's true. It is like this, and I think it got to do also with. I mean, you can tell us a little more about that. It's like the life in this being in which we are part, which is the Earth. That's the way we call it. Will not be possible without the sun. It's basically, if there wouldn't be the sun doing what the sun does, the earth would not be fertile, living being. So it's the combination of both things that basically makes that most of the original cultures of the world, always, paid respect for both the sun and for the earth, and for all the rest. I mean, also for the moon and for the rest of the planets, asters, and sky, and the movements in the universe. It was a connection, not only the connection with the body, like you were talking before, with the electrical grids of our body, but with the electrical grids of the earth, but also with the electrical grids of the universe. It's a whole thing. A whole thing is one thing. It's not different things. It's the same. It's the same system in different scales.
Right. Yeah, there's something that scientists do today. Now they're looking for what they call exoplanets, planets something like Earth and other solar systems. And we pretty much understand that in our solar system, there's nothing like Earth to move to. But But they always look on these rudimentary levels. Does it have water? Does it have oxygen in the atmosphere? And kind of they stop there. There are so many millions of factors which allow us to exist on this planet that we're just part of this system. And it includes insects and bugs and bees and pollen and a chemistry that's so complicated. And that's why the GMO monster foods are such a disaster, because they think they can create something and put it in this system and it'll somehow be compatible, and it isn't at all.
Oh, sounds like we're getting up to another break, folks. So we'll be back soon with more of James McCanney and Alberto Ruz. Welcome back to I'm Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter, doing my show on the road this week from the beautiful Sandbanks Provincial Park in near Picton, Ontario, on Lake Ontario. Just an amazing place to be. But I had to check in with my two buddies, James and Alberto Day. I couldn't miss this for the world. So, but hey, this is the time when I usually put in my spiel for the importance of supporting freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio. Please go to the donate button, or as I often suggest, check out the archives. I use them myself almost every week, $5 a month. You can pick up this show. You can pick up any number of amazing shows that are available on the archives from the 80 so different hosts on Revolution Radio. So now, guys, I want to try to we've been having some great discussions about sort of more more esoteric, macro, metaphysical issues, and I want to bring it back down to the physical plane now, and because I know James has got this great invention called the wing wheel generator, and I just wanted to know if Alberto had any time to look at it or talk to anyone about it, or maybe James, you can explain it first to Alberto how it works.
Yeah, go ahead, James. Tell us a little about it. I read some about it, but I mean, the people didn't read it, or many of the people who's listening to us or will listen to us have not read it. So start talking about it. Yeah.
Okay. The wing generator is you might call it a next generation energy device. And what I did, it started about maybe over 10 years ago. I was asked as a scientist, engineer, physicist to do an overall efficiency study for the power grids, the power companies. And as a side note, as an afterthought, they asked me to do an analysis of what they called the upcoming alternative energy industry, how that would affect things, etc. So anyway, in the analysis, I discovered that the current methods of generating electricity with steam, which comes from burning coal or burning nuclear energy, or about another third of our use comes from natural gas. Those are the big three, about 33% each used to create electricity. About 70% of the energy simply goes off as heat, so it's tremendously inefficient. Then you convert it to electricity, you put it on the power line, you transport it, you bring it to the local community, and then you put it into a light bulb or something. And only between 5 and 10% of the energy that's actually burned originally turns into something useful at the end at your house. And so a tremendously inefficient process, tremendously expensive, and that is not mentioning the environmental damage that's done by those forms where you take an inert substance, create heat. They have latent heat in their chemistry, or in the nuclear part, in nuclear fuel, turn it into heat, and then this immense amount of heat comes out, and then all the other terrible byproducts of these burning fuel for our energy needs. It's terribly inefficient. So then I examined the alternative energy industry, and primarily solar, and there's hydro, which is a very clean form of energy. It's simply changing the water falling in a river, or the potential energy of water in a river, into energy. So it's very efficient. But in terms of the worldwide energy demand, hydro cannot provide it. It's a very small fraction of our energy needs. And so that leaves wind and solar. And it turns out that solar is not that great because the sun only shines a few hours of the day when it's actually useful. And so if you're going to store and use solar energy as your primary source of energy, then you need a tremendous storage capability to store the energy. And in addition, you need a vast array of solar panels so that because you're only gathering energy for a few hours of the day. So your solar panel investment is huge and your energy storage investment is gigantic. So that leaves wind, because wind blows day and night at the North and South Pole, whether it's day or night or whether it's raining or sunny or whatever, the wind is blowing. So wind, it turns out, is the most available energy source, even though there's more energy per day coming in as solar. The wind is a much more readily available and usable energy source. So I turned my attention to wind. Then I discovered that the alternative energy industries were being basically built, and the devices, et cetera, the technology was being built by General Electric and Siemens and these major corporations, which had an invested interest in their nuclear power and other forms of generators, coal generators, et cetera. And so I'm going, wow, there's the vested interest here. And then I developed a topic that I did many radio shows on, called the myth of alternative energy. And in other words, the technologies for wind generation, solar generation that were out there that everybody thinks, oh, we're getting green, we're having these other technologies, were really terrible technologies that would never, ever substitute the central power company. And then I learned that was the entire point, that if there was ever a technology that came along that would challenge the central power company, it would never see the light of day. So all of these efforts at green energy, et cetera, you see, are really non-efforts because anything real would get squelched. So I started designing at the ground up, being a physicist, an engineer, understanding aerodynamics, et cetera. I started building a wind extraction and energy extraction system for the wind that was extremely efficient. Now, you're all familiar with the 3-blade wind generators. They're horribly, horribly inefficient when they get up to bigger sizes. In fact, they can't make them any bigger than the models they're building today, about a 2 megawatt or a little bit over 2 megawatt system. The majority are around 1.5 megawatts. At that rate, they are at best about 10% efficient. And so they say that's a 1.5 megawatt tower with 3-blade wind generator, but you're only getting about 150 kilowatts of energy out of that on average if it's working. And the design is very bad. It's prone to breakdown. Most of them are breaking down all the time. And so I said, wow, I'm going to design something, if I can, that's really going to capture the energy. The other factor is that the wind is not blowing hard all the time all over the world. You might have an average of 15 to 20 mile an hour winds, or some places a little more, but you have to capture the wind energy at these mid-wind speeds also. So I started designing, and what I designed was an extremely efficient system for extracting energy from the wind. And not only is it very efficient, but you can build them very big. You can build them up to 1,000 feet tall, big enough to where you can replace nuclear and coal-burning power plants. And so this was the ticket. So once I got on this, there's factors, for example, like all the heavy equipment is on the ground. These are very lightweight. They're not extremely heavy. All of the heavy equipment, which is the part that generates the electricity, is on the ground. And so I have an example. 3 of the 1,000-foot towers could power the city of San Francisco by putting these offshore. And also, they don't have the problems of the 3-blade wind generator. By their very design, they move very slowly. So they don't kill birds. They're not environmentally dangerous. They don't produce high-frequency electrical noise. I've designed out of them all of the problems that existed in the previous generations. Plus, the materials that go into it are very eco-friendly. For example, the blades on a 3-blade wind generator, one of those blades weighs 65 tons. And so they're tremendously heavy, and that's pure chemical. That's pure chemistry that goes into making those. So the other thing is that people don't understand the environmental damage that goes into making a solar panel, that goes into making lithium-ion batteries, which we use in our cell phones and in electric cars today, et cetera. And then the final issue here is electric automobiles and vehicles. There are many pure electric buses now being sold. They're using them in Brazil. There's many actually manufacturers, but the problem is they get their electricity from the coal or nuclear power plants. So the energy is terribly polluting that they're putting in the electric buses. So they've made a good step, but what we need now is something that'll produce that level of energy from the wind, that it's an eco-friendly design. And so my first attempt at commercialization of this system is what's actually being produced right now. It's what I call the Pegasus. It's the 12-meter diameter model, and it's sufficient to power a small village, a ranch, a large farm, or any other, like a facility, a manufacturing facility. It can directly compress air, which in France since the 1800s, and in Europe, they've been using compressed air as a form of mobility and transportation for automobiles, for trains, etc. And so the wing generator not only can produce electricity, it can compress air, it can directly drive desalination plants. One of the biggest expenses in removing salt water, or the salt from seawater, is the energy, the amount of electrical pumps that have to work constantly. This can now be done by the wind, and you have a lot of wind at the ocean. So we can now make literally extraction of clean water from the ocean literally a free process, except for the filters, which last a very long time. So anyway, that was the point. The other thing that the wing generator can do is you can put them on big ships to power ships. They can use the wind on the ocean to go across the ocean. And it's very different from a sail because it converts the wind into propulsion like on a propeller. And so that's one of the uses of the wing generator. But anyway, go ahead.
And I just want to interject here that most people don't realize that the vast majority of the pollution right now from the burning of fossil fuels actually comes from the shipping of goods. Approximately 90,000 large freighters are crossing the oceans all the time. They're dumping 240 times the amount of acid rain, nitric acid, sulfuric acid, these really nasty chemicals into the environment, directly into the oceans, and therefore stopping all the cars and buses and industry on the land is going to have no effect whatsoever on the biosphere until we clean up the mess that's being created by these damn ships.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You look at a big oil tanker, 10% of the oil in that tank, it's used to push the boat across the ocean. And a lot of people don't realize that we have plenty of oil in the Gulf of Mexico, for example. Why don't we use it? Because shipping is as big a part of the industry as the oil industry itself. The same with coal.
Yeah, and the quality of the fuel used in ships is like tar sands fuel. There's no processing. It's just pure sulfur and oil, and it's absolutely and completely full of toxins. The exhaust.
Right. The other part of this, and part of my study, was that we use way too much energy. The economic lifestyle that we have, where people are driving up and down the road every day, two family cars, going to two jobs in rush hour traffic, it's insane. The amount, when you look at the LA freeway, 6 lanes going one way and 6 lanes going the other way, it's insane, the amount of energy that's being consumed just to maintain this 40-hour-a-week work week type of environment.
There's a question from the chat. and it
I
is
see that.
directed for James. It's one of the fellow hosts here on Revolution Radio, Earthplay, who's got a great show on Mondays and Tuesdays called Terraforming Earth. He says, James McCanney, how do you filter radioactive Pacific waters? How do you filter out that?
It's a real big problem. The unfortunate thing is it's being filtered out already by the food chain, by the microplant life, which then is eaten by the entire food chain, and they're getting very high concentrations of radioactivity in whales or the tuna or whatever. So it's already being done. Unfortunately, it's killing off the food chain in the Pacific Ocean. That should have been stopped from Fukushima immediately after the accident. Obama blocked it. The Japanese did not want it because the Japanese are a culture that saves face. I can't tell you all the political ramifications, but it should have been cleaned up. There are companies internationally that could have gone in there and cleaned it up and stopped the flow, and it would not have been as bad as it is. But nothing was done. There were over 600,000 spent fuel rods at Fukushima that were destroyed, and it's all in the environment. I mean, you can measure it at the top of the Pyrenees in the French Pyrenees. It's horrific. And how do you clean it up now? I don't know. I don't know if there's a process literally where you could clean up the Pacific Ocean and the damage that it's done. And once that stuff's out there, that has a half-life of, thousands to millions of years. It's there for good. It's a terrible disaster. Japan just reopened its first nuclear power plant since Fukushima this past month. The political powers that run this planet are, they're just too huge. It's an absolute insanity. In the United States and all around the world, the use of nuclear fuel is absolutely insane. In the United States, they keep extending the commissions of these nuclear power plants, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and way beyond the lifetime of these plants. They're aging, they're leaking, and they keep running them. These are, disasters in the making. This leaching the water into the, because they have pipe systems that are underground, they can't go look at them, and they just turn a blind eye and continue to commission these faulty nuclear reactors, over 100 in the United States. It's an absolute disaster.
James, just in terms of the nuclear waste, though, we talked about that one, waste that isn't sort of gone almost China syndrome, but basically out of control, like Fukushima. But you have a plan for getting rid of that waste, right? The solid nuclear waste.
Well, there's no easy plan. To store it is not a good idea, because out of sight, out of mind is going to be that until one of those casks starts to break, and then they're quickly going to start to heat up the other casks. The whole problem, or one of the problems, is that originally these reactors were designed to burn a very low grade of nuclear fuel. In the Reagan era, after the demise of the Soviet Union, they started decommissioning warheads at a rate of about 100 or 200 every few months. And that's what they started converting into fuel rods that they were then using in the nuclear reactors. These plants were never designed. It would be like taking a Ford Escort and putting nitroglycerin racing fuel in it and driving it at 150 miles an hour and see how long it's going to last. These nuclear reactors were not designed for the nuclear fuel that they're burning in them. Additionally, the nuclear power plant now has to produce enough electricity to run the cooling plants that cool the fuel down, that they're stored in these casks around and they don't have any place to put them. So they're storing in the worst possible place right at the nuclear power plant. And that was what happened at Fukushima. They had 600,000 spent fuel rods on top of the generators, literally, where they were keeping them cool. So when the reactors blew, the fuel rods blew with it. Absolutely insane. I mean, who's running this ship? It's just way out of control. So yeah, everything that's going on with nuclear energy is an absolute disaster. They continue to do it, and now Obama wants to get off of coal. Coal is not good, but it's better than nuclear. But we're running it around. I think we're about 14% nuclear, and about I don't remember. Coal has been on the increase. So most of our increase in energy over the last 10 years has been due to the increased use of coal, which is horribly polluting, in spite of the fact that it's relatively clean.
James, when I
Yes.
saw your wheel, some of the images of the wheel, I saw them. There was, immediately I started to think about the boats in Mississippi back in the 18th century. I started
Try on mute.
how those
There-
wheels would work
Yes.
in connection with the tides of the ocean. I mean, the tides of the ocean are more strong, I think, than some of the winds, and they're constant. And you can use the low tide and the high tide, so you can balance and know exactly. Because many places do not have wind. I mean, here in our community, that was one of the first things we thought about it. We thought we couldn't put some windmills, and they didn't work. Simply we didn't have enough. We have a couple of months on the year where we could use wind, but the rest of the year we don't. And you can see it
Correct.
just by watching the trees and watching the
Right.
plants. They don't move.
That's
What about
very
the tides?
typical of the tropics. Yes.
Yeah. What about the tides? The tides, we have a large coastlines all over the world, and I don't see too much being used in terms of energy with the tides. And I always ask myself why.
Well, the thing is that, okay, say you were going to use that energy, and what you would do is build something the equivalent of a big float, and it would raise up as the tide came in and then drop back down as the tide went out. But the investment in these is so large. They have devices like this that work on the waves. They have some projects out in the North Sea above England and Ireland, where they have a lot of waves. But still, the investment in the infrastructure is so great, and the amount of energy that you get off of one device is not that much. So the return on investment and the investment for the amount of energy created is just, it's not economically feasible. And one thing, when I did the wing generator, I had to pass that step too. Can it economically? So my litmus test for any alternative energy device is simply this: can it economically replace coal, nuclear, and natural gas as our sources of energy? And so that, when you look at anything, how much is the infrastructure going to cost? Just as an example, the 3-blade wind generator, using the 1.5 megawatt model, that is standard, that's what you typically see all over the place, and then giving it a very generous 20% efficiency, and that's assuming they're all working all of the time, and you're getting about a 20% efficiency. It would take 77 million of them to approach our international energy needs. Now, clearly, when they put in a wind farm, you might have a couple hundred, or on the big ones, they might have, 500. But 77 million, I mean, the number is so staggering that you just know that you can never approach that. And that's the thing that I did with the wing generator, is that when you build, here's the problem with most things that, let's just look at the generation of electricity. In your car alternator or a generator, the wires in there, the magnets or their alternators or whatever in their generating electric fields, they have to spin very fast to make that happen. And so the problem is that all wind generation systems try to spin fast to drive the generator, which has to spin fast. But what I discovered is a way to extract the energy from the wind using airfoils, directly, very efficiently extract the energy from the wind, but the whole system moves relatively slowly. But when you get up to the big 1,000-foot models, what happens is the outside diameter is moving so fast that it's moving at about a 60-mile-an-hour velocity relative to the wind, even though it's turning very slowly. And so this is where the power comes in of the wing generator. Some of these factors that you cannot scale up a 3-blade wind generator any more than 1.5 megawatts. My systems can scale up to 500 megawatts or even larger, maybe even twice that, up to a gigawatt. And so, plus the the monetary and physical investment is relatively small. It costs much, much less than a coal or nuclear power plant. And it's 1-for-1 replacement. Plus, they will generate electricity for 100 years for free. You don't burn coal. You don't have to buy coal. You don't have to produce nuclear power or nuclear fuel rods and all the environmental disaster that goes with that. So all of those factors.
Yeah. Now, when you said before that you needed, I don't know how many millions of the 3 blades one, how many would you, for the same amount of energy that is needed, how many of those wind generators of yours would be needed?
I'm estimating about 3,000 worldwide.
Worldwide.
And so, right. And in the United States, probably between 300 and 400. So it's just about the same number of commercial nuclear and coal power plants that we have.
Yeah.
And also, you would put them, for example, offshore, off of San Francisco. I was just out in San Francisco and up by the Bay Bridge area, up on the hills overlooking. You can hardly stand up. The wind blows there like crazy all the time.
No. Yeah.
And like you say, I'm aware of the tropics. There are many places where you don't get much wind at all. You might get a little breeze, but you don't get sufficient wind to generate electricity. But if you create electricity in these places where there is wind and then ship it off to the other places, and that's one of the things I talk about in my book. It's called Distributed Energy, in that the way things are today, the central power company controls the voltage, the 120 volts or the 230 volts, 60 cycle, they control that. When people start coming online, with solar panels.
Going for another break here, buddy.
Oh,
We'll
no.
have to just keep this on hold until we get back after the break, folks. Thanks for listening to I Am Nature. Welcome back to I Am Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter. I have 2 amazing guests with me this week, James McCanney and Alberto Rus. We've been talking a lot about practical solution to the energy crisis, getting rid of coal and nuclear and converting to perhaps James's wing wheel as a possible solution. I think it's a good one. But at this point, I want to switch the topic to the Gaia Foundation just for a little bit of time, and I want Alberto time to give him more time to speak. Alberto, I tried to reach your friend who's running the Gaia Foundation, but maybe you could give me a hand trying to connect with him. I'd love to get him on my show. Do you think you could help me out with that?
Yeah, I will. I'm just, even tonight, tomorrow, I'm going to be making connection with him, and I can let him know that you're looking for him. Because I just gave you the connections, but I have not talked with him about that. But I'll do it. I mean, for sure. I'm putting it out in my list. And the Gaia Foundation, as you know, is a Danish foundation by 2 people, Russ and Hildur Jackson. And back in the philanthropist, and he's got enterprises, and he was able to make a lot of money. I don't know exactly why or how, but I think it was mostly through the movement of money. So basically, at a certain moment, he decided to invest in supporting eco-villages, and supporting the eco-village network. In fact, back in 1995 is when the Russes and some and people coming from different eco-villages in the States, in Germany, in Italy, in Australia, in different places of the world got together and basically started to talk about creating this network, which is now called the Global Eco-Village Network. And their first meeting was in 1995 in Nari when they decided to call at Findhorn, Scotland, at the Eco-Village Findhorn, Scotland, to call for this first meeting. Nearly or more than 400 people came from all over the world who were representing either projects or networks of projects who had to do with the eco-village transition, to the idea of moving from intentional communities to eco-villages. As you remember, we all people from the 60s started moving back to the land and started with the communes. But slowly we started to understand that it was not enough just to move to the land, to know how to live on the land and not against the land. And that's how I think many of the inventions for solar energy or for wind energy or for bioconstruction or by bioagriculture or all those different things that started to become eco, bio, sustainable, soft technologies came from that generation, from us in the 60s that moved back to the land, or some of us into the cities too, and started to create communes. The communes at a certain moment either collapsed as intentional communities, or they became a step further and started to improve and become established settlements. And those established settlements, some of them are now, like Findhorn, more than 50 years old, or like us in Huehuecoyo, we are more than 35 years old, or many of the farm in Tennessee is 40-something years old. So that movement from communes to intentional communities to eco-villages has been a process that has gone on pretty fast, And Gaia Foundation was at the beginning of that purpose, of that project, of that creation of that network. In the beginning also, there was only 3 different regions, which the Americas, all the Americas were considered one only region, and then Europe and Africa, another one, and Oceania and Australia, a third one. But now in the last month of July that we got together for Gen plus 20, the Global Eco-Village Network plus 20, we're again more than 400 people, or close to 400 people, representing maybe 15,000 eco-villages and from more than 70 or 80 countries. And some of the people who are supposed to come, they couldn't come because from visa problems, because the gathering was in Scotland, therefore they had to go to Great Britain, and passport and visas was not easy. So we're talking maybe that there is 100 countries in the world now that have either just individual projects or networks of eco-villages. And now we have also, besides the eco-villages, we have now many permacultural centers who are at the same time permacultural centers and eco-villages. And slowly, that new movement that started a few years ago of the transition towns or the transition projects, who are also taken up from permaculture, from eco-village, and multiplying all over the planet, So we're talking now that, I don't know if somebody has done, like a survey, but there's probably several million people who are already living, and I'm not talking about traditional villages, but people who has changed their ways, their habits, and they change their formulas for living to try to have a less negative impact on nature, And obviously all those eco-villages and networks and permacultural centers have to do and deal with energy, So I think many of the projects are experimenting, or they are trying with different sources of energy. In Findhorn, for instance, they try with the windmills, with the normal windmills. They have still 3 of them, big ones, that are probably still being using, and I think they're still using them. And in other places, you have the solar energy, you know, and the cells. And like this, I think the different places are trying to use it. But mostly, I think what the communities are trying to do is to reduce, you know, to reduce the amount of energy that we are using in the cities, basically, you know, and to be more conscious about where the energy comes from and the cost of that energy, not only in the time in the sense of price, but also in the sense of what contamination or in sense of exploitation of nature. So, uh, 10 years ago, the Gaia Foundation and the Global Ecovillage Network understood that they had to create a source of education, and that's where Gaia Education came for, you know. And the idea was again supported by Jackson and by the Jacksons, Ross and Hilder, and by Gaia. I mean, I'm sorry, by Jen, the Global Ecovillage Network, to start a program of education, of eco education, that is being growing also and developing in the last years very much. And now there is been eco-village educational courses and workshops and formations from more than 80 countries, you know. And we're talking about also several thousands of these workshops that are being offered to people who do not live in communities, who don't live in eco-villages, and who basically they get in 1 week, 2 weeks, and I don't know how many hours is the program of ED education, but you get enough information and it goes enough tools that you can start changing things in your life. And that is reproducing, that is multiplying, and that's going on more and more all the time. You know, I think that's the only direction, rational direction we can go, and that's many people is understanding that.
Alberto.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Alberto, I like the idea that they're reducing the amount of energy they need, but if they had a good, reliable, clean energy source, would you see them using more energy and find possibly, because you have artists, you have many different talents at the eco-villages, but from what I understand, many are still connected to the grid.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, we are connected to the grid, you know. We were about 6 years non-connected to the grid, and then we have a couple of the houses who the people were able to buy solar systems, you know, cells, and they're using them. And I would say that that is true for many of them. I was just recently in Africa, and I was just visiting some of the eco villages in Senegal, and because they are not on the grid, they are using solar cells, you know. And I imagine in the places where they can use, like in Europe, in some of the places where the wind normal, 3 blades cells are multiplying, like in Spain and Italy, I've seen thousands and thousands of them. Maybe also some of those eco-villages that are using them as well. I think the problem with the energy and with the amount of energy you use is the same thing that with drugs, you know. When you start using them, you know, and then you get addicted to them, you start to use them more and more and more, you know. It's the coffee, maybe coffee or sugar, or maybe marijuana, or maybe cocaine or whatever. Once you start using it and depending on it, you start using it more and more, and you lose the original consciousness you had about using little, or about using it for parties, or using it for a specific spiritual reason. We are an addictive, very addictive species. You know, I see it in my community with water. All our water comes from a waterfall that we only have it for 2 months in the year. So in 2 months in the year, we have to collect the water that we're going to use for the whole year. And it's enough. I mean, it should be enough. We have 13 houses, maybe 40 people, 40, 50 people. We should be able to use that amount of water we collect to support ourselves for the rest of the year. And we did for many years. But now, with the changes with the children growing up and the people getting more lazy and more used to the habits of commodity, of comfort, people start using more and more water. You know, even when you wash your mouth or you wash your teeth, you know, you start to see that instead of using a glass of water, you open the faucet and you start letting the water go. And I see it in all the houses. Sometimes even in my house, I see some of my people and family doing it, and I get upset. But that's something that I guess we forget very fast. You know, we forget very fast, and that's something that I know how we can change it.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you try and maintain a balance. And is there a need in the eco villages for transportation, or do people pretty much stay there? Do they? I'm talking about daily transportation.
Yeah. Well, that's again, at the beginning we had 2 or 3 cars. Now we have 10 or 15, you know, and that's what I've seen reproduced in all the eco villages and most of the eco villages. Again, when I was now in Africa, they didn't have cars. You know, they have chariots pulled by oxes or by horses or by mules, you know. But that's because it's Africa, because Senegal, because they live in the desert, and because they are trying to change those villages and bring some of the eco technologies so the villages can have electricity, they can have water, they can water their fields, because we're talking about the desert. They can have gardens, they can grow some of their food, they can recycle some of the waters, they can do different things that they couldn't do, and that's why many of the people were living or are living and going to live in the cities, you know. But like in Finhorn, when you go to Finhorn, like which is a model of eco village in the world, you go inside, and if you don't know you are in Finhorn, you will think you are in a village, in a normal village that from Scotland or from England or from any of the countries from North Europe, you know. And yeah, that's again another of the things, you know. And some of the eco villages have been able to maintain economy and education and all of that within their own territories, you know. But no, at a certain moment when you have children and your children, you know, grow up at a certain age, you can have them in little schools, alternative schools. But then themselves, they want to meet other kids, and they want to go to the nearer village, and then they want to go to the nearest city, and then they, at the end, many of those children, they want to have a different life that they had in their communities. That's another thing that I have, you know, been talking a lot about what's happening with next generation of us. You know, after us, when we created communities, we created intentional communities and communes and eco villages, but not necessarily our children are going to want to live that way.
Yeah, that's an interesting. You know, it's like your this generation cycle. Like sometimes people are more like their grandparents than their parents.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you raised in the country, you want to go to the city. If you were raised in the city, you want to go to the country. And
right.
But that's, you know, giving people the opportunities. But then the other thing is, if we had cities that were really eco-friendly cities that were, you know, free of crime, and they were nice places to go to, a lot of cultural development, then, you know, you think of the Renaissance period in the Middle Ages, or the you know, other periods during certain periods of time when the culture was really growing, or Venice, or some of these places where they had tremendous amount of culture, and you know, it must have been very exciting to live in these places. But unfortunately today, there's a whole different rule that manages our cities.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But I mean, back in our time, you know, when we were younger, we spent a lot of time outside. We didn't have television, we didn't have computers, we didn't have iPhones, we didn't have cellulars, and all our children grew up with that already, you know. So when you're talking about energy and about way of living, you know, from our generation, from the 60s to the next generation of the 70s, the 80s, there is a big jump, you know, in terms of dependency from an energy, and dependency from all the things that the city offers. I was thinking right now when you were saying that about the Renaissance, about two books, one of them is Ecotopia with, from Ernest Callenbach, and the other one is this Fifth Sacred Thing from Starhawk, which they both are science fiction books, but they speak about the possibility to cities to turn into green cities or to turn into ecotopias, And obviously, that's one of the things that keeps us doing what we're doing, is that we expect humanity to become more conscious, and we expect larger and larger amounts of people understanding that we cannot continue the way we're going, and suddenly making a jump of quality of our ways of living, and turning and understanding that if we don't do something about, well, that these examples of eco-villages are just we're just like the kindergarten of a new culture or new civilization in which we all have to evolve in that direction. We cannot continue in the other direction. Otherwise, we're doomed to disappear, just like the dinosaurs.
Yeah, well, it's right now what's happening is people simply, it's like the world's spinning and they just want to step off the train, and you can't solve, I've tried hammering on the wall, so to speak, and tried political things, and through my science tried to change things. But the world is just on a direction that it's like you can't stop it. So the only thing you can do is get off and make your own path. And in doing so, more and more people see that that's a better way to live than to make a lot of money and live in the stock market or whatever. And it's a better way to live. But as it grows, hopefully we can manage it so that it remains something useful, and it remains something pure and innocent, like in the original stages. That's the unfortunate problem with the human race, is we start out with something good and somehow it gets changed, and we're all standing there scratching our heads. What happened, But yeah, as long as there's good people on top that remember, and that's the biggest part, is to remember the roots and the origins.
Yeah. Well, I think that, if we consider the past, of our history as a species, as a humanity, there's probably been even terrible challenges in the past. I cannot think what it was to live in Europe back in the 13th, 14th century. And I cannot think also what it was to live in Mexico, what is now Mexico, back in the 16th or 17th century, with the beginning of the colony, and all of that. And then I cannot even think what it was to live on the First or the Second World War in any of the countries where that was happening all the time, or to live today in Syria or in Iraq or Afghanistan, or any of the countries where they're living. But I mean, in a way, we have to be a little optimistic, realistic optimistic. You can be pessimistic, you can be totally optimistic, or you can be realistic optimistic, And then I prefer to stay on that side of the playground.
Right, and in doing so, you create a path, and that's the thing that draws people.
Yeah,
is because everybody is looking for that, but in today's society, people are confused and they don't know where to go or where to turn. But there are entire countries today. I'm sure you're familiar with, like, Bolivia and Venezuela, and they're at least trying to turn the entire society.
Yeah. In spite of all the resistance from outside and from inside, they're trying. Bolivia and Ecuador and Iceland and Bhutan, and there is small islands which are countries also as well, trying to go a different path, and we move as a species, and evolution of our species is very slow. We go very fast in technology, but we go very slow in consciousness.
Right. And that's the big thing, is that there's the old tradition of the island of Lemuria, as opposed to at the same time of Atlantis. Atlantis was very technologically advanced, kind of like the United States today. But Lemuria, the people lived in basically a paradise. They didn't, their food came from the environment, and they spent a lot of their time developing social skills and community. So it was just two different, completely environments. And it seems like people like you, you're stepping away, you're just starting this, and it's growing. Like you say, every day and every year there's more people. And it's not like we have one country that you are in. You're all over the place. So it's kind of like the seeds are being planted all over the place.
Yeah. And I think that what we learned in those 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years, in the last half century we've been creating this, the next generation is going to pick up and learn about that, and they're going to do much better than us.
Well, it sounds like James and Alberto, we're getting near the end of our great show this week on I'm Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter. Thanks so much, James and Alberto, for coming in. I love you guys a lot. If you could hang in just for a bit at the conclusion of the show so we can chat about a few things, I'd really appreciate it. And Angela, again, thanks again for a great job producing the show and always being there when we need you.
Thank you.
So good night, all.
Good night.
From Brian Porter. Okay, let's chat a bit. Thanks, guys. Night, all.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Hi, this is Bo.
And this is Rocco.
And the Bo and Rocco Show is here to offer insight into legal and lawful remedies. Our goal is to remain free and help others remain free in an ever-increasing police-like state. With the help of our guests, we try to answer questions such as what went wrong and what can we do about it.
So tune into Revolution Radio at www.freedomslips.com Wednesday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to listen to the Bo and Rocco Show.
You don't need to expect us.
We're already here.
Revolution Radio.
Every Tuesday evening on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, we present our goddess spiritual warrior, Kathy Bilski.
I command. I call to the architect of the universe's divine creators and ask for permission to quantum leave the world in all life forms on all planes and dimensions, seen and unseen, connected with planet Earth, to let us go beyond our known potential into the greatest unknown golden age the universes and worlds and all planets have ever experienced.
Kathy teaches the spiritual truth so that you may create a better life and be able to make positive changes for yourself and for the planet. She helps us remember that we are not powerless, but very creative spiritual beings having an Earth experience. Time to quantum leap into the age of divine enlightenment and let Kathy provide you with the tools of knowledge you need to awaken spiritually. That's the Quantum Leap Show. Let Light Unite every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern on Revolution Radio Studio B.